Welcome back. At an anti-Israel rally on Saturday on the campus of Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri, 100 protesters were arrested, and the university released a statement reading in part, quote, "We arrested 100 individuals who refused to leave after being asked multiple times. This number includes 23 WashU students and 4 university employees." So, if you do the math, the question remains, who are the 73 others and who is funding them? This is just one example from one college over the weekend where we are seeing more outside agitators causing more problems than the students themselves. For more, we are joined by Kansas Congressman Estes. Thank you so much, Congressman, for joining me this morning. So, yeah, I think the big question is, what are we really seeing on these college campuses? It seems like there's a lot of outside agitators that are causing the most problems here.
There really is, and it's part of the concern. I mean, you know, what started out as anti-Israel protests right after October 7th, we've seen it turn into anti-Semitic protests that are actually just targeting Jewish students and harassing and trying to keep them from going to classes. And, you know, the last time we had in the world Jewish students prevented from going to classes was during the right before the Holocaust in Germany. And that's not right in America. And we need to focus on that. And we're seeing so many cases where the university administrators aren't managing, they're either supporting the protesters or they're actually ignoring what they should be as their responsibility. And you're allowing all this harassments and the death threats and things like that are out there. And the concerns we have, particularly, is what are the right checks and balances on university administrators with what they have. They get a lot of federal funding, federal taxpayer dollars that go to support them, and under Title VI, university administrators are responsible for providing a safe and secure environment for the college students to learn from. And what we're seeing now with all these protests, with all this attacks that are actually going on and harassment, that there's really calls into question, are the administrators doing their job, both as higher education administrators, but also when you look at the tax deductibility for both universities as well as these outside groups that are actually funding all of these unknown people that are coming to support these protests.
Yeah, I think that's becoming a real problem. And we're hearing that the reports this morning that there could be these outside groups that are now funding these people to come in and protest. And they have the tents. All of the tents look the exact same, which is very interesting. All the signs look professionally made. They look the exact same. Tens of millions of dollars being poured into these pro-Hamas groups now to protest on these college campuses. So what do these university presidents need to do to keep their Jewish students safe? Because many that we've interviewed this week, they say they feel far from safe on campus.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, they have campus security. They have the ability to call in local law enforcement to actually support and make sure that things are safe. They also have the ability to keep non-students off of campus. I mean, there's typical codes of conduct around, are you a student and do you have the right to be there, as opposed to a non-student that is visiting, and what the responsibilities you have in doing that. And that ought to be something that the university administrators ought to enforce and ought to hold accountable for. You know, parents, they send their children to go get a higher education, and you know, they want to do it in a safe, secure environment, and these university administrators ought to be responsible for that so that they can help all the students share in the growth of the American dream. That's what they want to go for.
And you mentioned funding, and as a member of Congress, has that been discussed to pull funding from some of these universities when we're seeing specifically that the presidents are not stepping in and they're not doing enough to protect their own students?
Yeah, we really are. Two things. I'm on the Ways and Means Committee, so obviously we look at tax issues from there. So we're starting to have some conversations around the tax deductibility and nonprofit status of some of these groups and the universities as well. We're also, I'm on the Education and Workforce Committee, and we've been very instrumental in trying to highlight some of these issues and the responsibility that universities have to actually fund and take care of their organizations under Title VI. And we've actually reached out as well to Secretary of Department of Education, Cardona, and that he ought to be enforcing these rules and making sure that universities are following that, making sure that their students are safe on campus.
So I want to pivot a little bit to the economy. A lot of polls coming out this weekend, CBS poll, CNN poll, Gallup poll, all talk about finances under President Joe Biden. So it shows that voters in battleground states, they're split on Trump and Biden, but that the economy is a top concern for voters. What are you hearing in Kansas? What are you hearing from your constituents?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, President Biden tries to say that Bidenomics is great, but what we're seeing now is just, that's not true.
Yeah.
I mean, we just recently saw the The first quarter growth numbers were down less than 2% and lower than expected through that process. Just a couple of weeks before that, we'd seen the latest inflation numbers that were up and increased over what the expectations were. And you compare that over the time that President Biden's been in office, and almost 19.5% inflation increase in cost of goods. And at the same time, wages have gone down about 4%. So, you know, it makes it tougher for families to actually put food on the table, to buy gas, to pay their rent, to pay for clothes for their kids to go to school. In my home state of Kansas, it's roughly $1,000 a month to buy the same amount of gas, the same amount of food, the same amount of rent as it was before President Biden came into office. And if you compare that to not that long ago, we had a good economy. Right after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed during the Trump administration, we had wages going up, we had inflation low, we had low unemployment, and we're actually focusing on good positive economic polling from the citizens. They felt comfortable with what was going on.
And a lot of stark numbers coming out of these three polls this weekend. One thing that really stood out at me, a CNN poll shows 61% of Americans say his presidency has been a failure. Just 39% say it's roughly successful. When you see that number for a sitting president who is up for re-election in just about 6 months, it's not good.
Yeah, it's not good. And I think the statistics I saw is that's the lowest of any president ever. And you compare that with President Trump's first 3 years in office and the economic growth that we had just before COVID hit, and the positive signs and the positive economic activity was there. I mean, people had more money in their pocket and they were better able to take care of their families, and that's just not happened under the Biden administration.
All right, Congressman, thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate it this morning.
All right, thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you.